sometimes it can be as easy as like, God bless, like unfollow. But even when you're in a room with someone else, it's like you don't have to get emotionally involved and entangled in their stories. You can still continue to be in your sovereignty, in your power, and like in your center as you're engaging with that person. And as long as you're showing up with your communication tools, like you don't have to allow other people to interfere or take real estate into your life, into your psyche, into your day. And if they are taking real estate, as you're saying, like, if it is something that is taking up, it's really worth looking at and being like, is there any truth in that? Or is there a story I'm running in my system that has actually kind of believes in this? And I'm just really mad and triggered because somebody mirrored that back to me.
Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited for today. I have my dear sister Blue and friend. We've got some stories to tell you. I can't wait to dive in because I feel like there's some giggles on the way, as well as very insightful quips. Blue, I want to introduce you, but first of all, say hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I was waiting for the you. So Blue, oh my gosh. I met Blue in a very interesting manner. We were both part of the Warrior Retreat. I'm actually going to be bringing in the leader of the Warrior Retreat. So you're going to be hearing all about it in this podcast. But Blue and I were both part of a really big, I would say, spiritual initiation leadership journey that happened in all over Peru. And when I first met Blue, I knew about Blue because we had so many mutual friends in common. So I had seen her like in the Instagram lands. I had even messaged her, which we'll get into that as well. And I just remember like seeing this lady and being like, who is this magical fairy? Like she just walked in with, I think you were wearing like a big old fur coat, or not a coat, like what is that thing called? The furry thing. You know what the name? What's the fancy name?
It was a cape.
Okay, you were wearing your superwoman cape. And she walks in. I was like, wow, this beautiful creature. I cannot wait to really get to know her. And our 2-week journey together, there was definitely a lot of knowing. One of my favorite things about every time I think of Blue, my most fun memory, which we'll also dig into in today's episode, is I don't even know like how to explain this. And I think this is the first time I've had you, Blue, and we're like explaining this to somebody that isn't in the Warrior group, which is that Blue and I share something that I do not share with any other person on the planet. And I don't know if I will ever share with any other person on the planet, which is that we're like shamanic clearing of the eyeball and earballs sisters. And I know that that's like super not clear as I'm saying it because I like literally don't know how to describe it. We're going to get into it in just a moment. But before I do, Blue, would you like to introduce yourself? And then I do think we need to clear up this shamanic earball eyeball sister quip that I've said, because it's definitely going to spark some curiosity.
Well, first and foremost, stick with us, folks, for the part about the sucking of the eyeballs and the ears. That's definitely a story that hasn't been. I mean, I've told it a couple of times on my podcast, but like only my version, not the included experience of your experience. But hi, everybody listening and watching. I'm Blue. Nice to see. I guess I don't see anybody, but nice to be received as a first guest on your podcast. That's a really big deal. So thanks for having me. And then a little bit about myself. Well, there was your personal reflection of our interactions, and then what it is that I do is I'm a podcast host of the Deja Vu podcast. We've been rocking it for about 2 years now. We're just under 100 episodes in. We have about 4 million downloads or listeners worldwide, which is really beautiful, and just continue to spread a good message across the world through biohacking, human optimization, spirituality, taboo, sexuality, and all things that we don't like to talk about, but we really do like to talk about, and we illuminate it with our awareness and our intention and attention. Outside of that, I am a co-host of a modern mystery school for women alongside my dear sister Reggie Riverbear, and we guide women all over the world into the ancient healing arts in modern day times and how to activate the pillars of their temple to live a life of absolute magic. And outside of that, I'm an artist, musician, ceremonialist, and just ultimately student of life, and just curious about what it means to be human and how to continue to pull back the veils of illusion so that we can receive the greatest gift that's actually all around us, and receive the greatest gift of really realizing that being alive is the greatest thing that we could ever be given. So that's a little bit about me, what it is that I do, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And filling in the blanks, my experience of you, Blue, is a powerful medicine woman, a very heart-led and soul-led woman, a very inspiring woman, and a beautiful speaker, not just for the articulation of your words, which is a skill set and a talent that I applaud you for in and of itself, but also the ability to connect those words to heart frequency. So that is my little add-on to your intro.
Thank you. I really deeply appreciate that, and I receive it.
So there's quite a few things that I would love to dive into today, and I think let's start from the beginning, which is really our time together at Warrior Retreat. And one of the things that I really, when hearing your story, that I really admired about you, and I really connected to and related to as well, which is related to the weird eyeball ear sucking story. So they'll definitely dovetail into that, which is that just your story around hearing loss, and just the way that part of you and what happened. And I'll let you step in and really share a little bit more about this. But what I really feel like when I meet incredible humans around the world, and I hear these incredible stories of people who've done so much in their lives and like are in such deep service, there's always a story before the story of who you are today and who you were back then. And one of the things that I really received about you was just that you're somebody who's gone through a lot and who had to overcome some really big limitations in your life that directly conflicted with, the person that you were stepping into. And so that pressure cooker, that cauldron of, I know you're a beautiful singer. And even when you share with me about your hearing loss, I'm like, wait, what? And you sing like that? Like, how's that? How did the two compute together? But of course I know, because I've met so many people along the path, such as yourself, who you see the front facade, you see a beautiful, joyful, kind, heart-led person. And what, a lot of people don't know is that underneath that, you really had to walk through the fire. You had to forge yourself through the fire to become that. And I see that in you, and I see that in me as well. Just like this hunger and willingness to overcome and rise up to and to meet life's obstacles, to really like get on your soul's path and become who you're meant to be. So I would love if you could fill in the blanks and share with us a bit about you've just told us who you are now, but what would you say are like the cornerstone events of your life that led you to us being together, like in Peru at Warrior Retreats? What would you say, like intuitively, are the top challenges and pieces that want to come through right now that will really start to initiate this conversation that I want to have with you around the feminine, around being heart-led? And there's a few things I want to say, but I always believe it's very important to set a context for who you've been.
Broad brushstroke. The amount of things that have had to happen really to ultimately align with the path of being in Peru, working with plant medicine, turning to alternative healing practices, because at the early age of I want to say like 24, 25, I was diagnosed with a hereditary hearing disorder that both my brother and I were diagnosed with. Hereditary being that, you know, it's genetic, it's both of us have it. Progressive, like it's getting worse, like we're ultimately going deaf, and incurable. They didn't have a cure. They didn't even know what had really actually caused it, besides sort of like placing this term that there was like a mutated gene or genetic between my parents that then created this. That's kind of like the best explanation that they could give. Now, in my early 20s, like everything that was guaranteed for me, or I thought was guaranteed, right? I would be able to hear, I can play music, right? Whatever it is, I'll be able to go out in public spaces, like all of these things that we don't even realize, like that we take for granted, was no longer something that was guaranteed to me. And so I didn't know. I felt like I was kind of given a death sentence almost. It was like, wait, I'm going deaf? And it was a massive jar experience. And I, over the following months / years, I started noticing that my hearing like rapidly decreasing to the point where like I didn't want to be in social places. I didn't want to be in social settings. If somebody is like blind or doesn't have a limb, or, you know, has like a, you know, is missing an arm or whatever, it's very obvious that they need support with something. But if someone can't hear, no one knows what's going on inside that person's head. It's a very isolating experience. And I could tell people about my hearing loss, but unless you've actually walked 10 miles in somebody's shoes, it's very difficult to actually empathize with that experience. And so I would go into group situations and it would be like people laughing and joking and jeering and having a great time. And I would have no idea what was going on. And so I had gone from somebody that sort of was the life of gatherings, and I would be a part of the conversation and like cracking jokes and be a part of it. No longer was I actually a part of any social situation, even just energetically, I wasn't involved. And so for me, it was easier to just spend the majority of my time alone than it was to be in groups. And I also had never experienced social anxiety, and I was getting like major social anxiety to the point where my heart was pounding and my breath would become short and shallow, and I felt really deeply uncomfortable being in these spaces. And so I just ended up isolating myself. I ended up losing my job as well, because I was working in Hollywood at the time as a producer for big live events, and I had walkie-talkie and headsets. And I couldn't hear any more the cues of what it was that I was supposed to be doing. So I had to leave my job. So not only was I like going broke, but I mean, going deaf, but I also was going super broke because I had no money coming in. And I was sort of just come out to LA. I didn't have a community or a tribe. And so I definitely dipped into like a really sad time of my life where I was just questioning everything and thinking, oh, maybe tomorrow I'm not even gonna be able to hear music, or maybe I won't be able to hear my own voice. And so during that time was when I started to create. I started to make art, because it's the only thing really that would allow my brain to shut off and to remember that there was still some beauty inside of me. And when I would create, I would see the beauty that I still had within me through the creation, through the painting. And so I would drift off for days, weeks. I would sit down for like 8 hours at a time and just create. And I taught myself how to paint. I taught myself how to draw during that time. And what happened is that led to me to be sort of, people would like offer, here, I'll pay you $50, draw my goddaughter for Christmas. And I was like, oh, I could make a little bit of money off of this. This is amazing. And so I started to create for other people, and I was like a commissioned artist, and that would just get me enough to cover my rent and to cover food, but like I wasn't really living lavishly at all. And ultimately, when something like that happens, I would call it's like a pattern interrupt. It's like, oh, life is great, da, 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 da. And then boom, in comes your Saturn return, and something happens, like a car accident, or we lose a loved one, or like something just hits us from the stage right and we weren't expecting it. And it's called a pattern interrupt into our daily routine. And so what happened was a giant pattern interrupt just derailed me and made me look at my life in a completely different way. And so that sort of I mean, there's so many intricate little details that go on here, but like doing sort of like a general arc, it took me into the realm of working with alternative medicines and taking this diagnosis of like, good luck, you're going deaf, and as not like rock solid truth, but to actually be in a deeper inquiry around how can I heal this, or how can I not be a victim of this, and how can I become a creator of this experience. And that's taken me on a really big journey. And that journey is really when my life kind of actually began. It's like, before that, I was sort of playing this role of what success is based off of something outside of myself, or some sort of paycheck, or some sort of job, or some sort of status, or some sort of impact. And be the good girl, be the nice girl, make sure that you wear proper clothes and you say the proper things, and good girls don't swear. And I literally just all these shoulds on my life, my whole life. And the majority of us, we get shoulded on from the moment that we're born, and then we become these versions of ourselves that we think is what is success, but we're actually feeling numb. And so when I was diagnosed with this piece, all those areas that I had played into this should, all of a sudden I wanted to break through those and actually understand what is really going on here, and how can I be the creator of my experience and no longer fall victim and prey and just hide away in my apartment and just take my death sentence. And so that started me on working with plant medicines. It started me traveling solo. I decided to learn the guitar because I didn't know if I was going to be able to sing tomorrow. And so I was just going to go, all I've got is right now, and all I need to see is 15 feet in front of me, and that's it. And just keep following the things that scare the shit out of me. But I tell you what, I stopped living for what other people's version of success is, and I started basing my barometer of success based off of how much I laugh. Like, literally at the end of the day, I lay in bed and I'm like, okay, how successful was my day? Well, how much did I laugh today? I laughed pretty a lot. I laughed a lot. I went for a walk, laughed with my friends, laughed with the dog, laughing. I was washing the dishes and I laughed at it, like whatever it is. But then I would say, okay, that's a successful day. And that all of a sudden took me out of the general narrative of this matrix hustle of life. And there's so many different directions that I can go in with the different pieces that have unlocked me. But I would say that plant medicines were a huge catalyst to understand like the intricate workings of like, what am I not actually listening to? Like if I was to take full ownership of this piece, like if my hearing is going, like what am I not listening to? And then the other piece is the Gene Keys, which is an incredible technology created by the man named Richard Rudd, which helped me to understand that our greatest challenge is also our greatest gift. So actually learning that I may not be able to hear everything, but I hear more than most. And what I realized that is because I listen to people with the entirety of my body. I'm not just listening with my ears, and our five senses are very limiting. So it like limits us to perceiving the world based off of this limited bandwidth. But our extrasensory perception of feeling, we're not really trained in it. And yet if we can learn to feel through this vibrational reality in which we live in, then we kind of have a bit of a truth filter or a lie detector, and it's the ability to trust our intuition and what our body is somatically saying. So I stopped being able to hear, but I started truly listening, and that was what really shifted everything. So there's quite a few pieces there that we can chew on, but okay.
Well, let's get you in. So something that you said that really stood out for me, you're saying about you listening to the entirety of your body, and I've experienced this of you. So I can stamp of approval. Yes, not that you need it, but yes, I have seen this myself. And it's really interesting you say that, because even, for almost a year now, I don't know where this came from, but in my master classes, when I'm talking to my clients, I got this transmission actually also from Maya, which was just like, listen with your body, listen with your body, listen with your body. And I say that often. I often find myself saying, listen with your body right now, listen with your body right now. And it's interesting because, when we look at the more logical side of it, it has been proven that I believe it's like 93% of communication is nonverbal, and communication is the bridge between the inner world and the external world. Like, how are you meant to know what's going on inside of me? Until we evolve to the level where telepathy is the norm, which, fingers crossed that will happen sometime. But until then, like, communication is that bridge of, this is what's going on in my world. Let me actually translate it into external. And a lot of people believe that translation only happens in words. And I think, one of the reasons that, because of my story, which I won't go into because it's in this podcast, it's in other episodes, but because of the way I grew up, I knew that, English is my third language. It's not even my first language. I came to the US when I was 10 years old. And there was this like very, very high drive that I had as a child that I need to learn English so well and become so articulate so that I can be understood, which is now a gift. It started off as a bit of a trauma response, but it has developed into a gift of being able to communicate. But in the past years, like doing the work that I do, similarly to you, like really diving into the underworld, of Shadowlands and understanding my intuition better and understanding who I am better, and actually starting to bridge back the disconnection that had happened with my soul, where my body and my soul were completely not at harmony, disconnected. And part of my journey has been coming back into myself in that way and in that intuition. And as I have been, it's been really clear to me that words are just a fraction. It's just a decoration. It's icing on the cake. And really, when it comes to like true listening and true communication, it really is like, it's of the heart. And it doesn't necessarily look like words. It might look like music. It might look like expression. It's movement. And being able to actually listen to somebody with our bodies is such a gift that we give to another, because it's not just the things that they're saying, or even, I forgot who said this, but and I don't know if this is going to start a whole other rabbit hole, but I heard somewhere that like English is a slave language. Like it's not, even the language of English in itself is extremely restricted in limiting our form of expression. And so when we are actually able to give somebody the gift of listening to them beyond the things that are coming out of their mouth, I know that like in my coaching, like this is such a powerful thing. I'm not just listening to what they're saying. I'm listening to how I feel in their presence, to like what's going on in how the energy is moving through their body, which is a craft that has taken me years and years to refine. And I'm able to get so much more information on the things that they're saying based on the pauses in between, or what they're not saying, or the way that they're saying it, the quality, the way that their hands are moving, the ways that their shoulders are set. There's like so much information that another human being is giving us when we choose to listen beyond. And so, I really connect to what you're sharing with me about your biggest challenge being your biggest gift. And, going back to the ear eye thing, like one of the things I'm actually ironically sitting here today filming this in my glasses. I wear my contacts 90% of the time. Like I don't think, even when we were at Warrior, I don't even think you saw me in my glasses, Blue. I was like completely like, I keep it behind closed doors, but because of certain things going on with my health, I've had to whip out my glasses and wear them. And actually I'm going through this journey myself right now, because I too have been diagnosed with not one, but two genetic degenerative eye diseases, that where my eyes have just been getting progressively worse, to the point where I'm legally blind. Like my glass prescription, I think, is like -12 right now. It's I can't see without my glasses or my contacts. Let's just put it this way. And so, I deeply relate to what you're saying, Blue, because I suffered so much. Like it just broke my heart so much. All the times where I wanted to see, or my contacts, like, needing to take out my contacts at night, or like I'm camping and I need to wash my hands. I'm like, oh my God, I can't see in the dark I literally can't see in the dark without my glasses. And there's been all these moments in my life where I've been consistently reminded of the ways that I am not able to see. I even had, as of a few months ago when I was in Peru, I don't know if you remember this, but I had shared with the group, like, hey, just please make sure that if I'm looking at you and you're waving at me and I'm not responding, like get closer, because even with context, I still don't have 20/20 vision. And that's something that not a lot of people know about me. And it's that frustration, when you're saying you're going to a party and people can't hear you and they don't understand because it's not like obvious. And it's the same thing. Like I'm going somewhere, or I'm at a festival, or I'm at an event, and someone's smiling at me, or they're waving, and I'm not able to fully see them. And then they think I'm ignoring them, or like I'm blowing them off. And then there's this awkwardness and this embarrassment that comes with this part of that, with this part of me of like, I'm not able to see, or I'm not able to hear, or whatever someone's, physical challenge may be. And so, I think one of the things that I really like throughout my own healing journey around this, that honestly, to be super honest, I'm still on the tail end of, is actually understanding that what I cannot see, I can see. And, I believe that because of my lack of physical visual sight, I've developed such a strong sense of intuition, because there was so many times in my life where I needed to see beyond. Look without looking is one of my qigong teachers says, like, see without seeing, look without looking, like perceive what your eyes cannot see, like soften your gaze and allow yourself to see within. And that whole concept of the third eye, and being able to really see beyond what is like literally obvious to you. And that's something that actually even really came alive for me when we were in that Peru trip. And I realized, oh my God, like it is not only okay for me to have this challenge, but it's actually one of my greatest strengths. And so One of the things as you were speaking, Blue, I remember, and I'm going to let you put words to this because I just remember how I felt when you said it. I don't remember your beautiful articulation of words, but I remember how I felt when you were speaking. It was, Blue and I sat in 2 plant ceremonies together, which was really powerful and really beautiful. And there was a breakthrough that I remember you had around your hearing, and it was something you had said something like, I feel like I can really listen to myself now. There was a reclamation of self that happened in your system after those 2 ceremonies, and after we had our the maestros basically literally like sucking the old energetics and the old frequencies out of us. There was some really big realizations that you had around your hearing and your self-expression and your desire to really listen. And I was wondering, well, I hope you remember them, because I remember how I felt when I received that transmission. But if you'd be able to share really like what that was that allowed you to, and I know you've been doing so much work around this, but I just remember you had a really powerful insight in the retreat that we did together around your hearing, and like that next level of how much of a gift it is for you.
I don't remember the insights necessarily.
Yeah.
Like it all ceremonies, like specifically months ago, it shifts from a thought process into the embodied wisdom. And that's the gift of integration, is that I don't have to remember anything that's been integrated. Like if I have an insight or a download that comes through and it comes hot and it like sits right here, and then in the months following the experience or the retreat or whatever it is that's activated that wisdom or that insight or that blind spot that's now become in my peripheral vision, then that information or that insight, then the journey for me to actually create it to be wisdom is integration, and wisdom sits on a somatic level. And so when that download drops in, I'll be journaling about it. I'll be processing it. I'll see where it shows up in my life. How can I shift my relationship with this person or this person? How can I shift my relationship with how I do business, or whatever it is that the insight is showing and highlighting in the way that I show up in the world. And then through the months following is how I integrate that wisdom into my body, so that at that point, I don't have to remember anything. Like I don't have to remember what the download was, but it's more so I become the essence of what it was that I was shown. So that's what I really mean by like when I speak about becoming the medicine, is that we don't need anything outside of ourselves. However, there are certain tools like ayahuasca, for example, which is the medicine that we sat with, that allowed us to be able to see a different perspective of our current reality, a different read on what is presently creating suffering, resistance, or tension, or whatever it is in our being. And then from that place, once we have received it, integrated, then it just becomes the essence of who we are. And so my journey with my hearing has not been just like, I didn't have like one giant epiphany at the end of the ceremony that shifted everything with my hearing. This has been a 7-year journey of many ceremonies and many insights and breakdowns and downloads and breakthroughs and everything in between. However, I'm not doing this work just for my psyche. I'm doing this work for healing my mum's suppressed trauma, shame, guilt, and anything that she still hasn't faced. My grandmother's, my great grandmother's mother, like it goes back really deep, 7 times 7 times 7 generations back, to understand that there's a muscle memory in my DNA that I am still picking up on. I'm still processing it. And I believe that this next generation are going to be, if we have done the work, and what I mean by the work is facing off with all aspects of ourselves and learning to love it and hold it and cherish it, because in the loving of the crunchy emotions or the uncertainty or the distortion, that's when we actually move it into a place of wholeness. If we're willing to do the work and face off with our emotions and really look at the uncomfortable parts of our psyche, then this next generation that will be coming through us as women, as mothers, will not have to process my generation's trauma. So they just get straight off the bat. I'm still processing my mom's trauma. You're still processing your mother's trauma. Our generation is still processing one generation before's trauma. And so that's really, for me, on the other side of that retreat, like it was just a continuation of my healing. And I went to that retreat fucking broken. Like I was on my knees. Like I had gone through a really big heartbreak, a really painful experience. Was processing a death of a really close friend in a very horrific way. And I called in a miracle. I called in some guidance. I called in some support. I sat in front of my altar and I prayed. And I said, I don't know what it is that needs to happen to get me out of this loop that I'm in, which I just feel like been sad for months on end. But I'm calling in some sort of miracle, divine guidance, angel, or divine intervention to support me with creating a pattern interrupt to my experience. And that ended up leading to Brandon reaching out, offering me to come to the retreat, me saying yes, booking my flights the next day, super spontaneous, and ended up being in Peru with you. And then when I'm sitting with the maestros and they're like, okay, what is it you want to work on? I'm like, well, my heart's broken, but that will heal with time. But really what I really want to focus on is like, still I'm, my hearing, like it's just it's a constant journey for me. However, at the same time, my brother's almost deaf now. Like, my brother was diagnosed at the same time, and he does not have the same mentality. He does not see anything as an opportunity to be the creator of. He does not see our greatest challenge as our greatest gift. He sees it as a victim of his external circumstances. And so we've gone on two very different trajectories, that we started at the same place, but the internal narrative over almost a decade has shifted exponentially. So for a lot of time, people will sit and have a conversation with me. They have no idea about my hearing. But what I've done is I've gone into these healing spaces, moved as much distortion out of my ears as possible, B, asked myself the question, what am I not really listening to? And C, massively up my presence in the presence of people. Like, if somebody's having a conversation with me, I need to see their lips, I need to see their eyes, I need their undivided attention. Otherwise, don't talk to me. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, but I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with you because I'm reading everything about your essence, and I'm going to need your undivided attention. But also, in retrospect, you're going to need my undivided attention. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with you. But if you think about it, every single place that I go, everywhere I go, whoever's sitting right in front of me, I'll give them my undivided attention. I give them everything in me. Now, if you imagine, like, the greatest gift we can ever give anybody ever is our undivided attention. Is our time and our presence is our greatest resource that we have. Then if I give my undivided attention to the person sitting right in front of me, and I do it every single moment and every single interaction, people feel seen, people feel heard, people feel acknowledged, people feel loved. And Maya Angelou, she talked about, it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you wear, it doesn't matter what you do. It's about people will always remember how you made them feel. And ultimately, that's really what it came down to, is recognizing, like, I'm limited to my five senses, but there's this extrasensory perception. And just like in Greek mythology, you see the seers, they're usually blind. Those that can see, the oracles usually don't have eyes. So in what I experienced with you is that you've had this challenge that has presented itself with your ability to see the world. You need a physical thing that is in the place so that you can actually perceive what the world is telling you. However, when I sat with you in the jungle and we sat opposite each other, and I watched you before I sat with you, because I'm really discerning who gives me guidance, right? Like I have a pretty strong barometer of resonance of what feels true in my system. And I sat and I watched you give readings, and I watched people disarm. I felt their armor come off. I felt that they felt seen, and they also received guidance around a softening of the direction in which they're moving in. And your challenge with your eyes has given you the gift to see. And you are in that archetypical frame of the seer. And so when I sat in front of you and you shared a message with me, which was something that was playing strongly on my heart, I can tell you that what you shared, it produced equal measure of insight than a lot of people had in their actual ceremony. And what that required was, for you to give yourself permission to be seen and witnessed within your gifts. And this is just one tool in your many big tool bag of tricks that you've got going on, but also your challenge with your sight, but yet your ability to see. And so it's really about, okay, every single person on this planet has been dealt a difficult card, right? Mine happens to be being able to hear the world. Yours happens to be one of them being able to perceive the world through your sight. Some people have experienced cancer in this life, or whatever it is. There's a whole onslaught of things. However, it's about what we do with it, which is going to determine, or how we respond to it is going to determine the outcome. So I could have stayed in the apartment, and I could have been depressed, and I could have blamed the world as to why it was happening. It was just going to shift the diagnosis. It was just going to continue to ensure that my stories are just for creation. I'm just creating more of that I'm emanating. Or I could say, you know what, nothing's guaranteed, and I'm going to book a one-way ticket. I'm going to travel around the world. I'm going to buy a guitar and I'm going to learn how to sing, because that scares the shit out of me, but I don't have tomorrow guaranteed. So it's, what do we do with it? For you, from my own tiny perspective of the grandeur of your life, what I saw you chose to do with it was feel the nerves, grab your cards, sit down, and share what you saw in others. You didn't ask for anything in return. You didn't ask anyone to pay you or Venmo you while we were in the jungle. You just sat there and you offered your undivided attention and your gift to be able to highlight areas in people's lives where they could actually receive themselves in a deeper way, and therefore from that place receive guidance of what it is that they're going to do moving forward. So ultimately, really, it comes down to, like, what are you doing with the cards that you've been dealt? What is your greatest challenge, and how can you shift it into the frame that it's actually your greatest gift?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Blue. There's so many reflections here that I'm going to pick with discernment. The first piece is just for clarity, because this is actually, speaking of being seen, you just exposed a part of me. I'm like, I do tarot readings. I work with the tarot cards, and I actually don't, well, it's out. Cat's out of the bag. And I do love to
I don't know why. Like, I'm like, yo, like, everyone should know that this is what you do, because it's so good. And like, you're accurate, and your ability to read, you're not just reading the cards. The cards are kind of like the magician's trick, right? It's like you pull the cards out and it's like a reason for you to actually have some sort of justification if they're processing what you're saying from the logical mind, and be like, oh, well, if the cards say it, then it's real. Yes, the cards are beautiful and they like hint at a certain topic, but you're reading the person, you're looking, you're seeing them, and then you're using the cards as a framework to then deliver the message. So yes, you read tarot, but also I want to go a little bit further than that, is that you have the gift of sight.
Gonna let that one land through my system. Thank you. Yeah. So, okay. I'm receiving that still. It's still sinking in. It's fun. Like Blue, of course. This is what this is, right? This podcast is literally for this. It's to expose and to grow and to allow to see and to be seen on a deeper level. So thank you for sharing that story. So, there's a few pieces that you're saying here that I just want to highlight to make sure that, like, they just stand out to me. So if they stand out to me, I'm sure they will stand out to others, which is that the first piece, which it seems obvious, but now that you're like sharing it the way that you sharing it, hopefully it isn't, which is that our biggest challenges, like, really, we have the power, we have everything within us to take our biggest challenges into our greatest gifts. And if we actually allow ourselves to go there, because the reason why, if it was easy to take your biggest challenge and turn it into your biggest gift, everyone would just be like, woohoo, a gift every time there's a challenge. But that's not what the norm is. That's not how it's been, because every time there's been a challenge, people have treated it as it's the end of the world, or it's a problem, I'm a victim to it, this is happening to me. Or like you had shared before you had your own realizations, which is, I'm condemned. I'm a prisoner of my condition. I'm a prisoner of my situation. And that's certainly one way that you get to approach life, if that's what you choose to do, consciously or unconsciously. But the other piece that I'm hearing, and I know this so deeply because I not only practice it in my life, but this is something that I'm constantly sharing with my clients, and I'm constantly having these conversations as well, which is that we also get to look at a challenge and understand, what if, or ask the question, what if this was happening for me? What if this was a gift that I get to have? What if this is here to make me stronger and give me more of what I desire and I want? When you start to reframe the question, then the answer must change, and it must look differently, which is not about, this is happening to me because there's something wrong with me, because, God doesn't like me, because whatever victim mentality story that can come in. And, there's no judgment, because I believe, like, when I see a lot of people playing out these stories, most of the times I'm like, honestly, like, this is what you were modeled. Like, this is going back to the ancestry. Like, this is what your caregivers showed you. This is what your parents showed you. This is what your environment showed you. So it's not even like someone's fault that they default to thinking that way, but it is our responsibility. And when we start to actually step into the role of the creator and ask different questions, like, how is this a gift? And then we open up the door to allow ourselves to come into this gift. and to actually explore this gift and see how it feels and see how it is. And something else you mentioned, Blue, that's really important. And I feel like you and I, having some Scorpios in our chart, really relate on, which is that journey of the underworld, and understanding that when you are faced with a challenge, when you're faced with something that's really difficult, with a heartbreak, whatever it may be, we could just be like, oh, that's what it is, and relapse into that victim mentality. But part of actually being initiated, at least from my experience, into the role of the creator is to actually have the courage to go into the parts of you that you actually didn't want to look at. It's to have the courage to be uncomfortable, to go into the pieces and places, like the stories that you did, that maybe you played in a way that were victimizing to you, to actually like go into the things you're most insecure of, to be, called out and feel uncomfortable, and to sit in that discomfort and to know, like, I'm going to be okay. Like, everything's going to be okay. Like, me being in a position, in a place where I don't want to be seen, and having the courage to love myself in this anyways, or at least show up for myself at the very minimum, is so important. And I found this, I know that you and I did some shadow work together as well, which I'd love to touch on, which is that when we allow ourselves to say, hey, I feel challenged, I feel insecure, I feel scared, I don't know what I'm doing, or whatever it is, but actually do it from a space, not from a space of, and I'm imprisoned to this situation and there's nothing I can do and I'm helpless and I'm going to just fall into a pit of despair. We have those moments and that's okay. But can we come back to ourselves and say, actually, like, I choose for this to become a gift. I choose to learn the lessons. And what you were saying, I choose to embody the wisdom and let this evolve me and grow me. What does it look like? What does it take? And am I willing to be uncomfortable in that? And I find that, knowing you and knowing me as well, like, we both really have gone through these really deep shadowlands and this darkness and these depths of soul that we need to confront. And the last thing that I wanted to also highlight that you said is so important, Lou, is that this concept of a pattern interrupt, as I speak to this a lot as well, which is that due to our past conditioning and the way we've grown up, we have all these programs that get installed in us, like these ways of being that aren't necessarily like in alignment to our true soul essence of who we really are. And so as we live our lives, we start to develop all these patterns and these way of thinkings. One of those examples is like the victim mentality, I believe, is a pattern that can be broken. And so when we start to see that there's another way and we start to put ourselves in these uncomfortable situations, we also start to cut the pattern and actually see that, no, there's another way I can rewrite my story. And I actually really can do this. It's not just an idea. It's not just a dream. Like, you're able to sit in the driver's seat of your own life and you can say, like, no, I don't want to like be in my house all day and be, not socialize with anybody. Like, no, what I choose is to learn music. What I choose is to travel the world. What I choose is to laugh. And there's a bit of friction in the beginning when you're like, when you're so used to, like, your neural pathways are so wired to be a certain way, there is a bit of like momentum that happens for you to be able to break through those patterns and do something else or choose something else. But what I want to really like communicate to whoever's listening is that it is completely and absolutely possible and available to you. And so that's what I wanted to share on that. And there's actually, like, I would love to speak to the shadow world and to get your take and your wisdom on that, Blue. And I'd love to, I'll use myself as a guinea pig, because I believe, like, you and I, in the first week, like, I really felt like my own insecurities popping up. And I know that this, you said to me, this is actually one of your gifts, which I would definitely want you to share about, which is that, Blue, like, you have this way that the more you shine your light, which is a beautiful light, like, the more it brings out, like, it either brings out people's light, or for people who aren't ready yet, it'll start to bring out their shadows. And I know that I experienced this with you myself, where I came to Blue about a few days after we had met, because I noticed these, before Blue and I had messaged her on Instagram, and she's a busy lady. And so she had missed that message. However, the story that I had assigned to it, because of my own insecurities and my own fear, was that she doesn't want to talk to me. She's not interested in me. And so, which is a story we broke down together. But I approached Blue and I said, Blue, I was so embarrassed. I honestly wanted to like shove it inside and just just not deal with it for the 2 weeks that we were going to be around. But the truth of it is that I was feeling a bit insecure, and I was my own patterns were flaring up around, oh, what if she doesn't like me, or she's not interested in me and she's pretending to be nice to me. There was quite a few insecurities that were coming through by that lack of interaction that we had before. And so I actually I remember just being like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And being like, okay, I got to talk to her, and knocking on Blue's door and being like, hey, do you have time? And she was like, she actually was in the middle of something. And she was like, no, I don't, but like, I can message you later. And just me being like, God, I got to sit with this discomfort for like a few more hours until she can talk to me. And, coming in and having a conversation with Blue and just like opening up to, hey, Blue, like, I'm feeling insecure and I feel like a little offended that you hadn't answered me, and like actually allowing myself to be seen in my insecurities as a woman, as a sister, and just feeling like I wasn't totally in my power, but being like, this needs to be spoken, this needs to come through, because I just am not willing to shove this in for the next 2 weeks. Like, it needs to be spoken. And I knew that the risk that I was taking was she might not like me, or she might judge me, or she might just like not want to be near me, or whatever the stories that were playing out were. And I remember like you and I, Blue, had this really big heart-to-heart conversation where, funny enough, you heard me, like you were fully, your body completely engaged, like listening to me, sharing with you. And the way that you responded to me was so healing, because you were so graceful and so kind. And you were just like, yeah, I see you, sister. And that's not like what you were perceiving to be true was not actually my reality going on at the time. And here's what was my reality. And we had this beautiful conversation. And I remember you saying to me, Celine, I need you in your power. I need you in your power. And it wasn't like a condescending, I need you in your power. It wasn't like can you just be in your power? But it was just like, I like, in our sisterhood, just be in your power. And that phrase has come back to me so many times, Blue, as I've been going through like a really big health journey that's, funny enough, is all about my gut, and the solar plexus area has been really challenged in the past few months. And you shared that with me, and I just felt so seen and so held. And I felt like in that moment we were really allowed to walk together as sisters. And so I'm just giving a quick, but there's a few things that I would love, whatever comes intuitively for you, to share. But I think what I wanted to highlight about this is a few things, which is, number one, sometimes it's really hard and really uncomfortable to feel insecure or to feel challenged or to expose your challenges to another human being. And number two, like the importance of sisterhood and actually being willing to be seen by another woman, which I know was a really big healing for me, and to be held in a way that wasn't like, trust myself that no matter how our interaction went, I was going to be okay. And number three, like the importance of being in sisterhood, or sister brotherhood, but specifically because we're women, and I really want to touch on the feminine as well, to be able to actually allow ourselves to be seen and to be in our power as we relate to each other as sisters. So whatever magic is intuitively brewing as I'm saying that, Blue, I'd love for you to share more about your experience of that.
Yeah, I think, well, first and foremost, it takes a lot of courage to be witnessed in the we deem least attractive emotions that present themselves, and all of us have them, and all of them have those moments of contraction, like, oh, not now, and I call it my golem, which when my golem shows up, I'm like, really, can we do this another time? I'm like, no, you don't have any say when your golem shows up, like. And ultimately, over time, I think it's just making peace with that essence of ourselves. Like, there's the inhale and the exhale. There's always going to be the shadow aspect, and there's always going to be the light aspect. And there is this, ultimately, if we want to have the inhale, we also have to have the exhale. And so there's the polarity of the existence to allow it to be in existence. And so when they show up, I think first and foremost, it's as important. Like, the worst thing that we can do when it shows up is shame and guilt it for even being there. Like, it's already enough to feel uncomfortable in these emotions, but then to put shame on top of it and then guilt ourselves, and it just creates this loop, and it just sucks life force energy, and it creates suffering. And so what I've learned just specifically from sisterhood work, which is predominantly what I do with the mystery school, is creating safe spaces for women specifically. But like, I mean, I'm not saying that that it's not like, this is not deemed worthy for men. I'm just saying that this is what we focus on specifically within sisterhood, and the deep sister wound that runs within most women, if not all women, is to be witnessed in whatever it is and to be loved for it. And I think that that was what actually creates the seed, whether there can be genuine healing. And because for the most part of our lives, it's like, well, when I show anger, when I show rage, or when I show jealousy, or when I show comparison, I'm not loved for it, and I actually get the cold shoulder. So this is the worst thing that I could do, is to be seen in this right now. It can actually feel like death to us. Like, it's so deeply uncomfortable. And yet to have the courage like you did to come to me and to just like, this is what's present, because ultimately I speak the language of energy. So I speak what's unspoken. Like I could feel what's unspoken. And so we could either have spent the whole retreat and you could have just not expressed it to me, and they probably wouldn't have connected really on it in any kind of intimate way, or you speak into it, be witnessed in it, and then be loved for it, and then create a deeper level of intimacy on the other side. And so when somebody presents anything, anyone presents anything in my life, and they have a truth that they want to share, as long as the finger is not like coming out like this, you did this, or you made me feel this way, I'll just take a step back for a second and just like take a deep breath. But the way that you approached it was like, this is my experience. I'm feeling this kind of way. This is how I received it. I felt a little bit offended. And I feel like that the story that I'm running is that I'm unworthy. Like, there's a level of self-awareness that you came to the conversation with. That's a level of ownership of your own internal process. Now, that's super easy to work with. If you came at me and you were like, you're a bitch, you didn't make the time, and da-da-da-da, which people do, right? It's like, okay, well, we don't really have much wiggle room here if there's no ownership that's been taken. So the beautiful thing about navigating the underworld of our shadow emotions is when we give ourselves ownership, we have the power to actually shift it. The second that we blame the world, the second that the finger goes out, we don't have any power to actually shift our current experience. And so that is an acknowledgement of what you came to the conversation with a level of ownership, which is born from a journey of self-awareness, which is born from you doing the inner work and looking at your internal landscape and seeing, oh, okay, this doesn't resonate with me. How can I shift it? How can I take ownership for it? Therefore shift it. And then we went into the piece, around like, I sent you a message on Instagram. God damn, if I responded to every single message on Instagram, I would be not where I'm at today. I would not be creating what I'm creating today. I would have no time to do anything else but to respond to messages. And it's funny because, side note, Instagram actually, my app stopped working and none of my messages come through anymore on Instagram unless I'm following you. And so it's actually really nice. Like, I'm like taking a deep breath. Y'all can email me. But anyway, that's a whole side subject. I basically manifested that into existence. But what we did was we actually went into an opportunity for you to hear my experience. And then what that did is it's recognizing that there's not one truth here. There's multiple truths that are operating. And if we can listen deeply to the other person's perspective, we can melt the stories that aren't serving. And what, like, the level of listening is, I listen to understand, not listen to respond. So if I'm listening to your lens and your perspective, I'm hearing the way that you're processing and perceiving it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, if that was actually your lens on it, it must fucking suck. It doesn't feel comfortable. However, here's my lens. My lens is that I don't have time to respond to my messages. I've never even met you in physical at this point. So like, it's nothing personal. It's got nothing to do with who you are. And as soon as that came in, there was like a melting that happened inside of you, that you started to like check what stories you're actually running. And then I saw your whole entire body soften. You're just like, ah. Oh. And then it was like this weight or this story just like drifted off you. And then we created we created like an agreement or like a practical solution moving forward. And this is where I said, if we're interacting with each other in an intimate way, I'm going to need you in your power. Like, and what I mean by that is that you can be also not in your power when you're in my presence. You can have the moment of the crunch of the uncertain, but you being in your power was you coming and having the conversation with me. That's also your power. You don't have to have it all together to be in your power, because your courage to be witnessed in actually, this isn't serving me and I wanted to share it with you with the intention of transmutation, that's a powerful woman. So just know that you in your power is still going to feel uncomfortable emotion. still going to feel unworthiness, still going to feel whatever it is, X, Y, and Z, the fucking dark side of being human, which happens to everybody. But it's about what you do with it that makes you powerful. And so I think you were already in your power when we had that conversation, because you brought it to me. And it would have been quote unquote easier to push it down, but actually not really, because over time energy is not created nor destroyed, only changed in form. And so if you had suppressed your truth, it would have sat in your body, and then by the end of week 2 of the retreat, your back would have gone out, for example, or you would have got a sore throat because you weren't speaking your truth, right? So it's like it's got to go somewhere, and it'll start eating you from the inside out. So once we understand how energy works to a degree, we would never suppress our emotions. And just know also, not every time is going to be a safe space. People get offended, people's egos get bruised, like people are going to project, but this is essentially the greatest journey we could ever do, which is know thyself. So when you really start to know yourself, when people start projecting on you, or people start pointing the finger and getting angry because you're so deeply rooted in who you are and where your intentions are coming from, it just kind of ricochets off of you. But it's a journey.
It's a really, really big journey. And I think, it really relates to everything that we've been talking about, which is really around that when you make that shift from just unconsciously allowing yourself to be in victim consciousness, and you start to recognize, oh my gosh, that's what I've been doing. And you start to create the shift between, actually, I'm going to be the creator of my reality, and I'm going to turn my challenges into a gift, and I'm going to actually show up for myself, for who I'm, everything that I'm meant to be here in this existence. And that really is a choice. It's a decision that we make. And like you said, it's not just oh, I did one IS ceremony and I'm done, I'm complete, like the switch has been done, I'm a creator. It's actually a series of steps that we take each. There's this really beautiful, in one of my journeys, one of the medicine men that served one of my journeys, he said something to me that it was like, every step you take it in sacredness and in love. And I really took that with me, that if every step that I take is in alignment, I'm inevitably going to end up, even though I have no idea where I'm going, I'm inevitably going to end up in the highest possible place that I could ever be, because every step I've taken is in love, is in sacredness, it's in play. It's in fun, or whatever my core values are, whatever, your core values are. If you take each step in that way, like you said, every night you go to bed and you ask yourself, like, did I laugh? Like that's one of your step ingredients, like if you've taken a step and it's in that, not to say you're going to laugh at everything, but it's like the essence of that. And we take these steps and then we start to decide, like, actually, I am willing to show up and design my life from the space of like who everything I'm meant to be. And I'm actually allowing to myself to even be surprised by what that is. And part of that is that sense of self-awareness. And, a really big lesson in my life is that I did used to be the person who pointed the finger and said, oh, what's wrong with you? Why did you do this to me? Like, if you and I had that conversation 3 years ago, Blue, it would have probably gone very, very differently. But part of my work, as part of my choice to become a creator of my circumstances instead of a victim of my circumstances, part of my work was to understand that what if, or ask the different question of what if I'm creating everything? What if? And the way that translated into my communication with people is that if I can show up to a communication like fully as a creator, fully in my power, like fully like knowing that I am responsible for my experience and I'm not going to make someone else responsible for my experience, then I know that either that person's going to receive me and it's going to turn out well, or they're not going to receive me, and that's also not my fault, right? And it's really about being able to say, I'm going to communicate that willingness to be exposed and to be uncomfortable that we've been talking about, and to actually say, like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to make sure my slate is clean and my energy is clear, because you're right. Like, when we suppress our emotions, when we hide things from ourselves, or we're unwilling to look at the things that we know need to shift or need to change, that's not for free. Like, that stuff is going right under the carpet and it's piling up and it's piling up and it's piling up. And unfortunately, if we let it accrue, if we just ignore it for so long, like, it's going to manifest into either a physical ailment, emotional issue. Like, it's not for free for us to suppress our emotions or to suppress our voice. And one of the things that I really love about you, Blue, and it's just your voice and the journey you've personally taken. I love your singing voice. It's beautiful. She's a beautiful singer. And I'm specifically also referring to your voice as a soul. The journey that you've taken has allowed you to really, like you said, dismantle those mechanisms of I'm the nice girl, I'm the good girl, I should be this, I should be this, and should be that. And my experience of you has really been to see you dismantle that. And even though I haven't known you for that long, I can feel the levels at which you have done that for yourself. And I also, with that mirror of like, I see that myself as well, and my own journey with unleashing my voice completely, which part of this podcast is that. I do have, one curiosity, Blue, which is that sometimes, I know this comes up so often, I know in my coaching sessions, and I would love to get your perspective on this, which is sometimes we show up like, let's say that conversation that you and I had where I felt like you mentioned, I showed up in my power, I spoke my truth, I took responsibility, I took ownership, I was in the seat of the creator. There could have been a chance, and part of the reasons why it's so scary to expose yourself that way and it feels like such a risk is because there was a chance that you would have said, "Oh God, you're really weird," and or like reacted or exploded at me or whatever it may be, and that's a reality. Like that's something that I know a lot of people are like, "Yeah, but I do want to be my truth." But ... What if this person, insert that projection reaction? And so, I'd love to get your take on like what happens, like, or how can you, if somebody was coming to you with like this, it's like, I don't know, like I want to take self-awareness, I want to take responsibility, I want to be in the victim mode, in the creative mode, but like what happens if somebody freaks out at me? Like what do you do? Who do you be? And I know you've dealt with this a lot. The more we shine our light, unfortunately, like we either match with people who shine that light right back, or we trigger the F out of people who like don't, right? And so I love to just I think the listener would be really grateful for your wisdom on what to do in those situations when someone isn't holding a space or reflecting kindness back to you the way that you did in this situation.
Mm-hmm. It's case by case. It depends who it is. If it's a family member, it's different. You can't be like, right, well, we don't share the same blood anymore. Fuck off. Like they're contracts. There's a specific contract with our blood family that we can't just like all of a sudden say, you're not my mom anymore, you're not my dad. So that's usually our training ground and our dojo of acceptance. Just accept where they are in their journey, and that sort of comes down to it with blood family, is a deep level of acceptance of, if you never change, and can I still accept you just the way that you are? And that's a really deep training that we go through within our blood family. And then when it comes to like interpersonal relationships, if I'm, for example, I don't know, I need to have a clearing conversation with somebody that I live with, and I muster up all of my courage to have this conversation, because I tell you, the people pleaser in me is fucking screaming while I am on my way to that conversation. It's like, don't do it! It's easier to stay quiet! And then this other part of me is like, you've got to, because you know how energy works, and if it's not expressed, it's going to create a divide anyway. It's going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy of the thing that you're afraid of the most, which is the separation between the two individuals. Now, it can go either way. If I address it from a place of full ownership, like recently I had a clearing conversation with a really dear friend of mine, and I just said to him, my fear is that I'm going to lose you as a friend. And so I just want to share with you a little bit of my process around how this has landed for me when these actions have been taken, how I've received it. And this is my fear, and my intention is that I actually want to create a deeper level of intimacy on the other side of this, but I have to clear this with you for us to be able to get there. Now there's a level of ownership, there's a level of vulnerability, and it was received so softly and so beautifully, because he's also done his own work. Now I'm in checkmate. If there's anybody in my field that is hellbent on just blaming the world as to why things are the way they are, that's not my tribe. That's not in resonance for me. Like, I'm not trying to have a bunch of friends. I just want to have like one handful of really amazing, aligned, heart-centered, driven, taking ownership, willing to be met in the uncomfortable and to melt it into a deeper level of intimacy into me, you see. Like, these are the humans that I surround myself with, and these are the humans I turn to when I've lost my own way and I've got myself caught in a loop that's not actually my truth, and who can see me very clearly and reflect back to me what they see, because I trust the way that they perceive their reality and the way that they move in the world. So people that are hellbent on blaming, they don't have a seat at my table. God bless. If it's my family, then that's a teacher for me around a deeper level of unconditional love and unconditional acceptance, because I was given them for a reason. They're my family, specifically designed to push the triggers in me that I can actually learn to love a deeper way. Because if I can love and accept my family, hell, I can love and accept the people that I choose to hang out with. So, and then when it comes to somebody that's just going to blame and just going to get angry, then we outgrow humans. There's a thing where we like have our childhood friends, and then we grow and evolve. That's what we do as humans. We're constant. The only thing constant is the change, the constant flux of change. And sometimes we outgrow people because they're hell-bent on being the victim, and I'm chosen to be the creator. And I'm chosen to actually say life is happening for me, and this person is saying life is happening to me. And it's like, okay, then that's the reality you prescribe to. There's 8 billion people on this planet. There's 8 billion different realities happening simultaneously. Everyone's prescribing to their own story, which is creating an internal map of the external reality, which is creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of that they're emanating. So we think about 60,000 thoughts a day, and those thoughts and those stories are creating the reality in which we live into. So if somebody is hell-bent on blaming the world, you can for sure check what's going on in their internal reality by looking at their relationship. Look how strained they are. Look how challenging they are. Well, that's because of how they're speaking to themselves, and therefore whether they're taking ownership or they're blaming. But I can instantly sense when somebody's not willing to actually do the work and to spar with me. Because if you want to spar with me, the sparring is with the intention that we create and mold anything that is not into love back into love. But if the sparring is that you need to be right and someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong, then we're operating in 2 completely different paradigms. I do not operate in the realm of right and wrong. I operate in the realm of perception. And how can we melt and listen deeply to be able to actually understand that other person's perspective and find a beautiful, happy medium ground, while loving them entirely for the way that they choose to see the world, and taking ownership of what it is that we're processing within ourselves, and recognizing we can trust the trigger to teach, the 5 T's, trust the trigger to teach. If I trust the trigger to teach me something about myself where there's no awareness, then all of a sudden now we're sparring in a way that we're both getting stronger, and we come back together as peaceful warriors. So if someone's sparring in the game where they need to be right, then I'm not sparring with them. I'm out of the dojo. I'm gonna go fight in a different dojo. So, yeah, that's my perspective, and it's bless you on your path. Like I'm not here to be pointing at and to have their internal map of consciousness be projected onto mine and then shamed and guilted for the way that I choose to live in my life. And this is another thing with social media, and the more that I'm sharing my podcast, the more that I'm sharing my voice, the more beautiful people are just showing up all around the world, standing in solitude. Also, the more people that really don't like me, and that's okay too. It's part of the terrain. It's part of the curriculum, and in that curriculum, it's just of equal measure for me to actually just know myself more. Because the only comments or the only reflections or the only spears that actually permeate my psyche are the ones that I kind of believe are true. And if somebody was to say to me a message and like, "You're a red frog," I'd be like, right. Right. But if somebody wrote a message and they were like, "You're actually deeply insecure because you didn't actually live with your parents from 7 years old, and so you've built this whole reality that is founded upon some sort of deep insecurity," I would actually look at that and be like, is there some truth in that? Is that, and I would really regulate, because it's actually like, there may be some part of my psyche that believes that could possibly be true. And so then I'll sit with it and I'll chew on it and marinate with it. But it's nothing to do with that. The person doesn't even know me. If somebody's giving you a reflection online, but they don't even know you, it's like giving a book review to a book you've never read. Like, what are they doing? They don't know you. So if it's allowed to have real estate in my consciousness, that means some part of my psyche, consciously or unconsciously, believes what they say is true. And that means that's my work to reconcile that piece within me. And over the years of growing my platform, it's got to the point now where I would say 90% of negative comments don't permeate my psyche. They don't have real estate in my day. There'll still be times when I'll have a breakdown and things will happen. But that's my work. That's mine to be done. If it's somebody that I live with and they're my best friend and then they have a problem, it's definitely going to affect me in a different way. So there's layers to it, and there's levels to the game, and ultimately everything that I'm sharing with you, by the way, disclaimer, is not the truth. Right? Anything that I'm sharing is just things that have helped me perceive and navigate my reality. But to think that there's one truth and one way is actually very problematic. So what I'm sharing is that, that one of my teachers said, which I really resonate with, is I don't know what the truth is, but I know what love feels like, and I follow that, and that's just what I live my life by.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know the answers. It's just about like, what is the most loving thing? And the most loving thing is the only thing I can take responsibility for is my internal world and how I respond to life. That's it. I can't take responsibility for how people perceive me. I can't take responsibility for how they're going to make their actions or what they choose to do with their awareness or what they choose to do with their day. That's not my business. My business is how I'm responding and what I'm doing with that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's being the creator. And you summarized it perfectly. It's really being the creator, taking responsibility for your reality, understanding that your belief system and how you choose to interact and engage with life is actually going to determine the kind of life that you are going to live, and which is completely within your will of control as much as you can control your, the only thing you can really do is like control. I don't even like the word control, but it's just like choose. Actually, I think is the better word. Like choose your belief systems, choose the way that you want to be walking forward and walking each step, and then like allowing your intuition and your emotional compass also to guide you through that. And another really big insight that I heard you say, Blue, is just like, for people who are like, oh my God, why do I continuously put myself in these situations? It's also like raise your standards as well, and knowing that we have our family, which we have chosen. And so that is a training ground for deeper levels of acceptance and compassion that we can create within ourselves. And it's all it is. It's like school. Like I'm training to come deeper and deeper into love and acceptance. And then anything that isn't that, like, it's just, you don't have to quote unquote put up with it. I know I have a lot of people who in the corporate world that come to me, they're like, oh my God, what do I do with my colleagues? I can't exactly like fire them or like get rid of them or like, not ever look at them again. But the thing is, like, it's not really about that so much as it is raise your standards for how it is that you desire to communicate. And for the people who can't meet you in that communication, sometimes it can be as easy as like, God bless, like unfollow. But even when you're in a room with someone else, it's like, you don't have to get emotionally involved and entangled in their stories. You can still continue to be in your sovereignty, in your power, and like in your center as you're engaging with that person. And as long as you're showing up with your communication tools, like, you don't have to allow other people to interfere or take real estate into your life, into your psyche, into your day. And if they are taking real estate, as you're saying, like, if it is something that is taking up, it's really worth looking at and being like, is there any truth in that? Or is there a story I'm running in my system that has actually kind of believes in this, and I'm just really mad and triggered because somebody mirrored that back to me? And so that self-awareness is so key to be able to navigate these challenging conversations, and actually understanding that one of my teachers said, like, you can be right or you can be connected. And it speaks beautifully to what you said, which is, this conversation can be about I'm right and you're wrong, in which case it's just about validating your ego so you can feel better about yourself and reinforce your own reality. Or it can be about what's present in this person's world, what's present in my world, like where are these two realities like not meeting each other, and am I actually willing to work with this person, or am I not willing? And all it is information for us to grow and continue to cultivate the relationships around us and either grow them or release them or outgrow them. But we don't really have the clarity of what the next steps are, or what do I do in this situation, until we can show up in our own sovereignty and really make that choice of like, I'm taking responsibility, I'm taking ownership. How do I show up in this relationship? And it will become really clear, very abundantly clear, because if I had come to you, Blue, the way that I did, and you had reacted a different way, it would have been very clear that you were not my tribe. And I wouldn't have had to walk away and like shame and cry about it. It was just like, okay, this is information. Now I'm clear that she's not able to hold that kind of space. And so that's what it is. And it doesn't have to be anything about that person, or me sitting there being like, well, that's because Billow's a bitch. Like no, it's just like, this is her way of operating. This is my way of operating. It is not a match. And it can be like this concept of divine neutrality that has also been passed on to me by one of my teachers. It's like, it doesn't have to be like a big deal, or like it's just like this divine neutrality of, okay, this is what it is, and moving on, continuing to raise my standards, continuing to live my best life, and continuing for me to on my own evolution journey. And whoever wants to meet me in that gets to be in that, and whoever doesn't. So yeah, I really love that. So I would love for us to start to to wrap up today's episode, the only thing is, Blue, we got to talk about. We have left one stone very unturned, and maybe some people have been on the cliff edge since minute one of this podcast, which is what the heck happened in that Aya ceremony. And I want to give the baton to you, Blue, because I just have a feeling you're gonna tell it in a funnier way. But I'm gonna add on to it. But can you please share? Because you said before, you're like, I want to work on my ears. Okay, so you decided to work on your ears. And then what? What happened?
Well, I thought about the way that you delivered part of the story at the beginning. You're like, yeah, we're in ceremony, and then the shaman was sucking on these things. And I was like, wow, that could be taken in a really wrong way, by the way. So we're just going to give a little bit of context of what was happening in this ceremony. We had a meeting before with the maestros, which is what you usually do as a consultation to understand what are your intentions, what are you calling in for healing. And both of us I mentioned my ears and my hearing. You mentioned your eyesight. And so there was one of the 4 shamans that is a master shaman, and he has done a very long diet with a plant called kamalanga. And kamalanga is a plant that teaches you when you do the diet how to do this specific healing modality. It's an extraction modality. And so during the ceremonies, I was called up at one point, and they laid out like a mat on the floor, and we were still like strong on the medicine at this point. We'd already drank the ayahuasca, and I laid down, and he basically has this concoction of the kamalanga plant. There's also fermented garlics, fermented onions, agua de Florida, and different plants, and the smell of it was absolutely foul. And he would like swish it in his mouth and then latch onto the area that there was like blocked energy. So for example, my ears. And how they extract the distortion, the dense energy, the blocked energy is through sucking it out. And so he's like sucking on my ears, like, and it was just like, it was almost like a trash eating worm is the best way for me to describe it. It's like, and the smell was grotesque. And then after he'd like sucked out like a bunch of the energy, he would then vomit and like purge it out. And the smell of the vomit and the smell of the fermented garlic and onions being strongly on the medicine, and it was just it's a very invasive experience. This isn't my first experience of a extraction ceremony. I've had an extraction ceremony in Mexico done before as well by a woman that they've actually used to work with. And they did it to both ears, and they did it for me on both nights. And it was a very, very powerful experience. And I've definitely noticed significant shift. It's not healed me entirely, but also it takes time. And I'm going back to the jungle, and I'm going to do a diet at some point to go back and do some more work with him. However, it's really profound, and it moves through stuck energy that isn't serving. And it's also like, if you're a fly on the wall, it's like, what the heck is going on?
Oh my God, thank you,
So,
Blue.
I mean, I got my ears sucked, and you got your eyeballs sucked. Here we are. We out here. We ride.
Yeah, thank you for giving more articulation for that, because jokes aside, this extraction ceremony is really, really powerful. Like when I was there, I mean, I couldn't cry because my tears were getting sucked out, but it was just like, it was big. Like I remember just, this maestro, he was sucking on your ear. He was literally sucking on my eyeball. And, well, first of all, I have never had even the thought has never entered my psyche of, what if someone sucks on my eyeball today? Like, it was the most foreign experience. Like it's I travel the world. I would say I'm an experienced lady. Like I've done quite a few ceremonies, and it's very rare for somebody or something to take me so off guard that I'm like, I have nothing to compare this to. Like I can even imagine or think. It was really potent. It was really profound. It was like really, I mean, it was beautiful because you could see like the way he was using his body as an instrument to just like remove the distortion from the eye/ear. And just the way he was actually allowing his body to process it for us, and just the vomiting. Oh my God, it was like, I just remember him vomiting and me feeling, the people pleaser in me was like, no, he's taking on like my pain and just like processing it through his system. Like the people pleaser and empath in me was like totally cringing. It was extremely uncomfortable for me to receive in that way, because it was, you know, I know that you also, I feel like you feel me here on Blue. Like I being such an extreme empath, I'm so used to being on the end of the table where I'm the one that's taking something on or supporting somebody to relieve the emotional weight and then like processing it through my system. I used to do that. When I used to do that unconsciously, it would result into energy fatigue and exhaustion and things like that. But now, like when I'm in ceremony or when I'm facilitating someone in breath work, or I'm you know, doing my coaching or emotional work, there's a time and a place where you're like, okay, this person just needs support, and I can hold this container and I'm able to like process and support through this. But to have that like be done for me in that like level of capacity was just super profound. But yeah, the whole, like, I just remember like being laid down on the mat, and they're like, take off your glasses, and I'm like, okay. I'm just feeling like it's like a not to be crass, but like, you know, like the first day where you're just like about to sleep with someone, and they're like, okay, we're gonna, what do I do here? I'm awkward. What goes on? And I'm like, taking off my glasses felt so fucking intimate. Like I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take off my glasses, and then I'm just sitting there and I can't see, and I'm also on the medicine. And then I just see like his, like in the blurriness of darkness, and also like just my eyes not being able to see. And I had a different vantage point from you, because I'm sure you just felt the breath in your ear. But for me, I literally saw this blurry, like black mouth thing coming at me. And then it was like, buff, it was on my eye, and it was like, I'm like, and I just had this moment of, wow. Yeah, my eyeball's getting sucked out right now. That's what's happening with the smell, Blue. Oh my God, the garlic.
Yeah, you get to check off your bucket list that you got a hickey on your eyeball. Vibes.
I will never forget that scent. Like to this day, I can remember the smell of the garlic and the agua florida and all those like different things. Like, but like I felt I could smell through my eye. Like the feeling of I can smell this through my eye.
It was disgusting. It was so grotesque. So anyways, now we have that in common.
I didn't 100% hate it the entire time. I gotta say, like, there's times I was like, I can find the enjoyment in this, like, because it wasn't like a 2-minute
I found enjoyment.
I
liked the second ceremony. The second ceremony, I learned a tactic. I was like, plug my nose. And then I just like because it was the smell that was the hardest thing for me. But when I plugged my nose, I really quite enjoyed it. Like I was like, oh, you're tickling my neck. Like I've got a very sensitive neck, so if anyone kisses it or anything, like he wasn't kissing it, he was very professional. But like it was like I was like, oh, I could vibe.
Did you have the thought like honest confession?
I actually just got a waft of the smell. Literally. Oh my God,
it's been with me while we're talking.
Bizarre. That is bizarre. I just got a waft of the smell of that. Oh wow, that just came in out of nowhere. It was a horrendous smell. I couldn't get the smell off me for days. It was awful.
It's pretty unforgettable. And I have to say, like, there was a moment. There was like 60% weirdness, and there was a moment where I was like, I wonder if like not only can I find the pleasure in this, but I wonder if like this can be repeated in my life. Like, would I want to try this again just for the experience of remembering what this was like? I don't know. I didn't go into
I'll definitely do it again.
The thought was thinking. It was thought of. It was thoughtin'. I'm making up words now, but yeah, it was thought. The thought was thought. But anyways, I thought it was really funny because walking out of that, I was thinking to myself, I don't know how do I talk about this? Like, and then I looked at you and you looked at me, and it was just like, sisters, like there's no way, like nobody understands it but you. And then every time I think fondly of you, I'm like, yep, nobody gets this part of this one experience of my life. I don't think anyone could understand but Blue.
I live for that shit. I live for like the crazy, wild, wacky, mysterious, mind-bending, heart-shattering experiences that are just like those little nuggets in your medicine pouch of stories, being able to share them with the world just in the right moment. And it's like, oh yeah, I've had this happen. That was my second time. That was my second shaman doing that. So I feel you, and it's a fun story to pull out whenever it's the right space.
It is. It reminds me of the word. Have you ever heard of the word ichigo ichi?
No.
It's a Japanese term, and please forgive me if somebody speaks Japanese and I'm totally butchering this from an accent standpoint, but it's basically it's a beautiful, very poetic, romantic concept that every single time you meet someone is the only time you will ever meet them in that way. And because once the moment passes, you're a different person. And so there's like this reverence to it that every time you are in a meeting, it's like you and I will never meet this way again. This is the only and last time. This is a unique impression in the fabric of the universe. And the next time that we meet, we're not going to be the same people. It's not going to be the same context. It's the same situation. It's different. Everything's different. And I love that. It's such a beautiful poetic term. And in that word, I feel like we share some ichigo ichi of like ear and eye sucking, because it's like that will never happen again in the order that it's happened, in the way that it's happened. So that's it. That's the one. So I hope that this has satiated people that were like, oh my God, I really need to listen to this entire episode so I know what the hell is going on with this. Here we go. I actually not intentionally left that as a cliffhanger to the very grand finale. So I would say I don't think it can get better than this. I'm going to leave this one as the grand finale of today's conversation. So Blue, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for showing up today and for sharing your wisdom and your heart and your presence as always. I always love talking to you. And I know there's been so many moments where even one of the reasons why I was like, got to get this lady in for a podcast episode, because there's been many instances where you and I are having a conversation. I'm like, I really wish this was recorded. So here we go. That wish has today come true. So Blue, would you be able to share with us before we let you go, how can people find you? What are the next steps for you? What is it that you would love? And is there anything that you would love, like walking away from this entire conversation? Is there any key takeaways or nuggets or question that you would love to leave the listener with?
Well, you can find me through Instagram. I'm Blue of Earth on Instagram. Also, my website is blueofearth.com. I'm also Blue without the E, just BLU. And then there's the Fluorescence, which is my modern mystery school. So if you go on my Instagram or my website, you'll see all of the links to all of the good stuff. I'm also the host of the Deja Blue podcast, so go check that out. It's on YouTube. We're also on all podcasting platforms, and we really dive in deep over there. I'm almost 100 episodes in, so it's been a journey. And some nuggets to leave y'all with. I mean, don't believe everything that you've ever been told and about what reality is, but allow yourself to recognize that you can only create as far as your imagination is willing to go. And so what would it look like to reactivate that eternal child that lives within you and to be able to play in a realm of infinite possibilities and magic? Because once you truly start believing it, then you'll start seeing it. And it's not about seeing as believing, it's about being as seeing, and recognizing that you get to create your own reality from the inside out. And so be really mindful what you subscribe to and what stories you're telling yourself, because stories aren't merely just for creation. And so whatever stories we tell others is the exact thing that we're calling more in of. So utilize your discernment around what it is that you let in, what you subscribe to, what belief systems that you create as the foundation of your consciousness. And as you continue to take ownership and expand your imagination, then expect miracles.
Beautiful. And for those of you who are listening and love the insights that were shared today, feel free to take a screenshot and tag me and Blue. Everything is going to be in the show notes. So at Blue of Earth and at Selena Costa, and let us know what about today's conversation you really enjoyed and what you loved. Thank you so much, Blue. I love you so much and really appreciate you coming in today and contributing your gifts with us.
Thank you, Mama.
Yoo-hoo!
Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning in to today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Selena Costa or visiting my website at selenedacosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.